You're listening to the School of Connection Podcast, Episode 12.
Welcome to the School of Connection Podcast with Rana Ulk. Each week, she'll connect you with the stories and wisdom of people doing extraordinary work that's changing the world. If you're hungry for growth and love inspiration, you're in the right place. Each episode will give you practical insights and ideas that you can take action on starting today. And now, your host, founder and chief connectologist, Rana Ulk.
Hello, everybody. I am coming to you today from the Sonesta Hotel and Resort in Coconut Grove, Miami. I'm on the 15th floor. I have a beautiful view of the marina and the ocean, and it is a gorgeous day. If you've been following me, you know that we are relocating to Southern California, and I'm really happy about that, but we're in our final days and hours here, and I've lived here for 21 years, so it's very bittersweet. We're finally out of the house. All our stuff is on an 18-wheeler somewhere out there. I don't know, maybe in Texas by now. We're saying goodbyes to our friends and killing some time before we have to greet our stuff in the new home sometime in the next week or so. And it's weird because I think it's really hitting me right now, even though we've known and been preparing for this for a couple of months. I'm sharing this with you because it's just really what's on my mind. I'm feeling a little melancholy about this, because it's just so easy to take where you are and the people around you for granted. Everyone is so busy. You put off getting together with the friends you love, and before you know it, suddenly your time is very limited. And guess what, y'all? You find the time. You do fun things, and you realize, wow, why couldn't we have done more of this? Like, my husband and I have spent this weekend just totally getting together with all these friends and having this awesome time. And it's what we've been missing. It's what I've been missing. It's what we're all missing. We're increasingly disconnected, and it just really takes a conscious and mindful effort to nurture our connections and our relationships. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's how I'm feeling, and it's appropriate for what we're going to be talking about today. My guest is Kevin Strauss. He is on a mission to spread awareness of the crucial role that our sense of belonging and our connections play in our overall well-being. He studies and works in the field of emotional health now after spending many years in biomedical engineering and technology. He's created what I think is a brilliant tool to solve the problem of our increasing disconnection and isolation. I couldn't possibly do justice to him, so I can't wait for you to hear about him and what he does. Here he is. Kevin, thank you so much, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation.
Me too. So let's start off with the intro I did. And I know that you do so many other things, but let's talk about well-being. What is your take on well-being and what it really means?
Well-being and wellness, which can be used, I think, interchangeably at this point. I think of wellness and well-being really as, nurturing ourselves in every aspect that we can, or really the key aspects of health. And I think those key aspects really come down to four primary areas. A lot of people have a lot of different definitions, but I like to choose physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and specifically separating out a mental and emotional. I think that's really important these days.
I love that you stress that, because everybody understands physical health, and it is in the area of emotional and mental health that I think things get a little confusing, and especially in our culture and in the media, that distinction between mental health and emotional health isn't made. And you have a really great way of distinguishing those two. Could you expand on that?
Sure, I'd love to, because I really think definitions help a lot. So once you've got that foundation and that basis. So I think of mental health a little differently than I think what mainstream society and even the whole industry thinks of it. I think of mental health really as our ability to focus and concentrate and think clearly, to perform those complex cognitive tasks, so that when we are struggling mentally, we can't think straight. You know, when you're at work, let's say, and you get piled on with 3 more projects and all of them are the number one priority, it's just hard to think straight. Or it's difficult to work for 8 straight hours without taking a break. So just like in physical health, you need a break from your exercise, you also need a break from your mental processing. So your brain needs a break, where I actually think binge watching on Netflix can be a good thing because it gives your brain a break. Now, emotional health, I think of really the definition I choose is our ability to give and receive love. So love, connection, and belonging. So that it's really the feeling. So whereas mental health is our thinking ability, emotional health is our feeling ability. And when we don't learn how to love at we're talking the first year of life, the first day of life even, when we struggle to feel loved and we don't really learn that ability, that skill, because we get shut down or otherwise shamed or judged for expressing our feelings, I think that is what is really damaging our emotional health. It's the connection and relationship that nurtures our emotional health. And then what I think the result of emotional health, the output, is our behaviors.
Yeah. And I think there are times, and I don't know if you and I agree on this 100%, but there are times when they do kind of commingle, right? Let's
Absolutely.
an example of being really stressed out at work.
Mm-hmm.
So in your opinion, if we're going to lay this out and paint a picture for our listeners,
mm-hmm.
Let's say I'm really stressed out at work. I've got 17 projects. They're all urgent. I don't know how to prioritize them. Mm-hmm. And so a day in the life of me with this work stress, how is that going to impact my emotional health and my physical health? And what am I going to be like at home? Like if you were to paint the picture, how would you paint that now?
Well, it's funny. The first thing, as you brought that up, I completely agree. And I think that gets to what we're talking about with well-being, mm-hmm. because I really do believe, and there's really good evidence of this, that the different realms of health all impact the others. So when you're working or nurturing your physical health, you can get some secondary benefits in your mental health, maybe tertiary benefits in your emotional health. If your mental health is struggling and you're burned out or stressed out at work, then that can impact your emotional health, which then impacts your physical health. I mean, I can tell you when I was at a recent job, working for someone else, it was so emotionally taxing. I was actually still able to function fine mentally. But once I got home at the end of the day, I've been an Ironman triathlete for 17 years. I didn't even want to exercise. All I wanted to do was watch videos about people living RV life, living on the RV life. That's all I wanted to do. That's the only thing that made me happy, that and talking to friends on the phone. I was so emotionally drained and exhausted and beat down from work that I didn't even want to exercise, which I love. So I totally believe that they all impact the other. I didn't exactly answer your question, but I truly do believe that. And one analogy that I really like, especially with the 4 elements of health, is your car and the tires on your car. If any one tire goes flat, your car doesn't run well. And I think your well-being works the same way. We tend to, I think you mentioned already, we tend to pump up just one tire, which is our physical health.
Yes.
But if the other 3 are flat, you're not going anywhere in that car. You're going to really struggle in that car. And I think that's where we're struggling in humanity, where we're really only focusing on the physical health And too often our mental, emotional, and spiritual are being neglected, and then we're just not well.
Well, the physical health, it's tangible, right? It's easy to say, do this, don't do that. And when it comes to mental health, the only time people really think about it is when things are going awry.
Yeah, when things get really bad. And that happens a lot even with the physical health. You know, it's come around where people are, you know, more mindful of their nutrition and their eating habits and getting their exercise or their steps. You know, that's a great thing, getting their steps in. But it's not until, you know, and even this doesn't actually always happen, but until you get cancer or, you know, heart disease or something where you really may change your behavior. But even then, you know, you can look at studies, and death is not even always a deterrent or a catalyst for behavior change, like for smoking, let's say.
Yeah. You know, for some reason, it just popped into my head. Ariana Huffington wrote a book called, I think it's Thrive. Not that I read it, but I remember she had a fall or something because she wasn't getting enough sleep and she was burnt out and working so hard. And so it is something like that all of a sudden wakes us up to the importance of mental health and getting rest. So if you were to tell somebody, just like physical exercise is hopefully preventive of certain physical ailments and diseases, what would you tell them to do for their mental health, emotional health, or spiritual health?
So that's a great question. I love it, right? Because physical health, like fitness and, you know, do a little exercise and eat well, right? Eat clean, let's say. So for mental health, I think give your brain a break is the first thing. So whatever that means to you, that could be meditation, that could be, I don't even think mindfulness actually even falls into giving your brain a break. I think that helps to maybe nurture your mental health or practice good mental health, but I don't think that gives your brain the break that the brain simply needs. Going for a walk, reading a book, watching some, you know, mindless television. They even say movies are better than watching lots of videos, let's say on YouTube, because with a single movie or TV show, you can really immerse yourself in that entertainment and really take your mind off of everything else. A lot of people like reading, you know, books, the trashy novels, you know, whatever it is, that's fine, giving your brain a break. For emotional health, I really think it mostly comes down to, it's not just about being happy, right? You know, emotions run the whole gambit. But I think what nurtures our emotional health, that ability to give and receive love, to feel connected, to feel the belonging, is really just having a great conversation with someone that you trust and love. That's really what it comes down to. Or it doesn't have to be a conversation. It could be an experience. You know, two guys can go fishing and not talk for 8 hours and feel like they've really connected. I think that's from Remembering the Caveman or something. There was a one-person act that was going around several years back.
I love that.
Yeah, so just sharing an experience, you know, girls, women, they might, you know, go to the spa together or have their nails done or, you know, have tea or whatever that might be. Guys might watch a football game, you know, and eat their, you know, subs or something, whatever that is.
I love that.
It's just something to kind of share a connection. But I think having that deeper conversation where you really get an opportunity to share how you feel and what you're thinking about, because too often conversations are just very surface level. You know, most text messages, especially between like parents and kids, I can't remember the numbers, but most text messages are really just logistical based. You know, it's what time you're going to be home from work, what time do I need to pick you up from school, what's for dinner, have you picked up the dry cleaning? That's most of what text messages are about. It's not, well, how do you really feel today? Or what's really going on in your world today? You know, what are the things that matter most to you right now? What are you worried about? And it's important for both parties to be sharing that information. If just one person is sharing, you're not going to really feel the same kind of connection, because connection is a two-way street. You know, it's got to be both. There's a lot about connecting with self. I could go on about that. But I really think to really nurture the emotional health, it's connecting with others. And there's a lot of research on that.
Do you ever think about, or I don't know that I've asked you or seen this, spiritual, what would you recommend for spiritual health? Or is that very individual? And
actually, I don't think it's very individual. Well, it is in a sense what you actually choose to do, but the definition is universal. We're humans, right?
Yes.
We all have basic needs. So I think for spiritual health, the definition that I choose for spiritual health is a person's ability to know and understand and pursue their purpose. So that has nothing to do with God and religion, which is what most spiritual health usually gets that kind of a definition. But I feel that discriminates against people of different religions or different beliefs or whatever. However, with my definition, or the one that I choose, if my purpose is to serve God, well, then that nurtures my spiritual health, and I have my God and religion component to it. But if my purpose is to take care of my family, so I need to, get a job and make money, or I need to be at home and connect with my kids and keep them out of harm's way and feed them and clothe them and give them shelter, that's my purpose. For me, I'm not married. I don't have any children. What gets me out of bed every day is doing what we're doing right now, talking about emotional health and well-being, and really helping people connect in that deeper way, more authentic way.
I love that, because spirituality, it really is about finding meaning and purpose. And for some people that is, God, a notion of God, their religion helps them find that meaning.
Absolutely. That is totally awesome. Go for it. If that works for you and that gives you purpose, and that's what gets you out of bed every day, rock and roll.
So this is a great segue for me to ask you, if you getting out of bed every day and pursuing your mission succeeds, let's say there's a finish line, right? What does that look like to you? What is the mission?
My mission, my vision, total success is world peace. That's it.
Expand on that, please. World peace. Okay.
So I'll try and make it as brief as possible.
Please.
But I believe that, and what I've come to learn over the last 20 years of digging into connection and relationships and human behavior, what I've come to believe and understand is that behavior is driven more by a person's emotional health than anything else. Because when we don't feel loved and when we don't feel a connection or a belonging, it hurts. It's really painful. And that pain is not physical, it's emotional. And a human or an animal, which we are, will do anything to avoid pain. So we don't have any real systems to help us connect in a deeper, more authentic way. So we choose behaviors to try to compensate in some way. So a lot of people choose alcohol to forget their pain, or drugs to forget their pain. And yes, then they can get chemically addicted. But even with cigarette smoking, and which they say, the scientists say nicotine's even more addictive than opioids, let's say, if the nicotine was really the hook that was keeping people addicted, well, first of all, people wouldn't be able to quit cold turkey, and they do all the time. But then when they came out with the nicotine patch, they thought, oh, we're going to solve the nicotine addiction because we're going to give smokers the exact chemical that they're hooked to, that they're chemically hooked to. But the nicotine patch is only successful in 17.7% of the users. Mm-hmm. So that tells me that more than 80% of the reason that people are addicted to smoking is not the nicotine, it's something else. So when you look at the research, which is all very scattered and around, because people, scientists, researchers are looking at individual behaviors, which I call symptoms, They're looking at eating disorders. And they find that when people feel more connected, their eating disorder improves. Depression, when you feel more connected, your depression improves, which, depression gets, it's really bad, could lead to suicide. Anxiety improves when you feel more connected. Your eating habits improve when you feel more connected. I mean, let's be honest. How many people eat their feelings?
At some point, I would venture to guess almost all.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And it's only when it becomes an extreme situation that it can be really detrimental. Everything in moderation, right? So a little bit here, a little bit there isn't so bad. But the research is pretty clear when you look at all of it as it's scattered around by behavior, but not so much by intervention. The intervention is the connection. Johann Hari has written 2 fantastic books, one called Chasing the Scream, which is about drug addiction and the roots of drug addiction, and addiction in general. And he says, the opposite, or he has found that the opposite of addiction is connection. His more recent book that just came out in 2018 is called Lost Connections, where he digs into depression and anxiety, again, finding that the real solution to depression is connection. It's not just a spontaneous brain chemistry malfunction. I don't think it is. I think that we're just not going back far enough into a person's environment. And by environment, I don't mean just the temperature and humidity. I mean, are you surrounded by arguing? Are you under stress and distress even as a child before you even realize it and before you can even filter it out for yourself? I think I've gotten a little bit off topic. Oh, vision and world peace. Okay, so we have all of these behaviors that we're using to compensate. I mean, when Amazon came out, how many of us, or the Home Shopping Network, we try to buy things to fill the void.
Sure.
We try to have the nicer car, the bigger house, and that shows us our status, our value in the world. Look how important I am. I matter in this world. But that need to matter in that way with the material things is really just a way, I believe, that people are trying to compensate for not really feeling the love and connection that they needed probably from before they were even 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So once we actually address the love and connection and we nurture the emotional health, then we will no longer need all of these compensatory behaviors. So when enough people aren't compensating with the destructive behaviors, then they'll be doing more constructive behaviors, helping others, those kinds of things. And when we have enough people doing the constructive behaviors, then that's when we'll have world peace.
I love it. And, I think anybody can relate to this on what you described was the macro scale, right? If everybody is doing this. But on a micro scale, I look at even my own house, my own household. It's just me and my husband, right? These last few weeks that I have been, I've had more on my plate than usual. I've been stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
I have been awful. I don't like myself. I've been so irritable, and that's what it does. It makes you irritable, and so you're more likely to behave in ways that aren't your usual self. And
absolutely,
we have an epidemic of everybody not really being themselves. You're not your best self when you're stressed.
You're not.
Yeah.
And then that's when, we try. I'm a big fan of emotional intelligence, but emotional intelligence is really more about how you understand and manage your emotions, whereas emotional health is simply the ability to give and receive love. Mm-hmm. If I don't feel loved as a child, then those neural pathways get set up. You can change those neural pathways, mm-hmm. but when they're already wired into your subconscious and get rooted as a foundation of who you are, it's very difficult. It is possible, but it's difficult to change. Of course, you can have a trauma later in life, and then that can really cause damage, to your emotional health. But I think, honestly, most of this begins before we're even 6 years old.
Well, the goal would be to have less to have to manage, right? With emotional intelligence, the less I have to manage, the happier I would be.
Yeah. And if I don't have to manage, this distress, this anger, this frustration all the time, this not feeling loved, not feeling heard, not feeling valued, and then acting out because of it, there's a lot less to manage. I think a lot of this, the Me Too movement and sexual assault, it's about power. Okay, that's pretty well established. But why do all these men feel the need to have power? And I would venture to say that this need for power is a need to show status in the world, to show the world I matter. Because if I never felt like I mattered as a child, then now I need to compensate. I need to feel loved. I need to feel important. And then that leads to the power, and then that leads to the poor behavior, and sexual assault and abuse is just another behavior. It's just another symptom of the same. Gun violence, same thing.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not trying to make it so simple, but I've been looking at this for almost 20 years now, and once you identify what I believe is a root cause, it actually is simple.
Well, and that's kind of how your mind works, right? To find the solution, summarize it, make it simple, find the solution, which is what you have been trained in. You come from the biomedical field. So I said that in the intro, and it's about time we tell our audience, how in the world do you go from engineering and the biomedical technology field to all this soft, mushy stuff that we're talking about?
Yeah. I love the soft, mushy stuff now. I know, it's so funny because, going through high school and college, it was always like numbers and, math and science, and there's an answer, and that kind of stuff. I took psychology courses in college for my humanities requirements, and I found it super interesting and everything. But I think it was really right when I got into the corporate America, into the workforce, even though I'd been working since I was 14 years old, but it was when I got to the actual workforce in a career, and I was like, how is America this superpower? Like, nobody wants to do anything at work. No one wants to accept responsibility. No one's even like really working. I know. I was like, I would walk by this one guy's office, and he'd have his newspaper, up in the air with his feet up on the desk for like the first 2-3 hours of a day. I'm like, how are we getting anything done?
Yeah.
So it really led me to the question of, why do people do what they do? I just don't understand. I just don't get why people do what they do for anything. Why do they argue? Why do they have trouble with the waiter every time they go out to dinner? Why do they always have an issue with the clerk at the store? Why do they always argue with their kids or their spouse or whoever? Why don't they get along with their parents? And all that kind of stuff. And I finally, and as an engineer, I'm a problem solver. I like to try to understand what's going on with any problem. And what I actually found as engineering is when I break the problem down into the smallest, most simple element, and if I can understand what that real problem is, or understand what the root problem is, the solutions were always so easy. I mean, they just come to you. And okay, I'm going to brag for just a moment, but this is why I've earned 73 patents.
Yeah.
Patents now, and a lot of these patents are products that are being marketed and sold around the world, and have earned hundreds of millions of dollars for the company, not for me. But that's okay. I mean, it was all part of my job, so I don't mind.
Well, it's a big deal, though.
It's a big deal. It's these are medical devices that are being implanted in people and saving lives. And they work so well because they're so simple. Mm-hmm. Once you understand the root problem, which, I understand that from talking to the surgeons and the scrub techs and things like that. Once you can really hone in on the problem, the solutions are just really not that difficult. They might be a little challenging to actually implement, but to know what the solution is really pretty simple. And I think what I've come up with here is the solution really is this emotional health component, and it's this need to feel loved. And it's just, as humans, we just need it. It's just a basic human need.
So where have we gone off the rails? I mean, as far as there's the family, right? I mean, family of origin, the first few years, but everybody has something that
everyone does.
Wasn't ideal in those years. And yet still we have people who have had terribly traumatic childhoods, right? Mm-hmm. And seem to go on to do well. Mm-hmm. And then we have people who seemingly had everything going for them and maybe even had very loving parents, mm-hmm. and can't seem to get a grip.
Sure.
What's going on?
Sure.
The later things? Is it, I mean, even what I said in my intro, we have other connections that mean a lot to us and we're not investing enough in them. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, and let me just say, I am not immune to this either. I have my issues.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, part of this whole journey is me trying to figure out my life and try to make my life even better and fully well, if you will. Sure. So, I'm not immune to this. We all have this. I think a lot of it really does come back to your primary caregivers. So we'll just say parents for right now, and our inability to actually connect with our children. I don't want to say blame. I think this is just simply part of our species and how we've evolved. And we just, as parents, and I'm not a parent, so I get that. I have lots of nieces and nephews, and I was a child. So, I have that experience. But I think that as parents, we only do what we know. We do the best that we can, but we only do what we know and what we were taught, what we learned. So if we're taught by someone who doesn't really know and get it, then we're not going to really know how to connect. So if our parents struggle to connect, then I'm not going to learn that skill. And my parents, my parents are great. I'll just be really personal here for a moment. My parents are fantastic. I know, and I grew, upper middle class, I had everything I needed, so on and so forth. My parents loved and supported me throughout to this day. And that's fantastic. And I feel it, and it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. At the same time, my parents criticize every single thing I do to this day. Right? I think
a lot of us can relate.
Everything. There was a year back in the late 90s where I would not allow my parents into my house. Like literally they'd come up in the driveway. I'm like, no, you cannot come in. And they're like, oh, you're being ridiculous. We're coming in. I'm like, no. And I literally did not let them in my house because as soon as they come in, oh, you've got cobwebs. You need to dust. Why have you watered your plant? Oh, you need to fix this. You need to do that. And I'm like, dude, I don't need this aggravation. Right? I mean, that's ridiculous, So I'm like, you can't come in. I just don't want you criticizing everything. But when that happens as a child, I think what happened to me was that I grew up with this feeling of not being good enough. Mm-hmm. And that's my story. And I think actually a lot of people struggle with I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Yeah. And that's definitely my story, or one of my stories anyway.
I have more than one too. You're not alone.
I mean, we all do. We all do. So maybe it wasn't like a major trauma that happened, but when you get nitpicked constantly for everything, like even if I would get I'd get a 92 on a test. Why don't you get 100?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm the baby of 3. So why didn't you get a good grade like your brother or like your sister? Now my whole personal history is out on the podcast.
It's relatable.
That's what happens is you get programmed, and it gets reinforced over and over and over. So it's those little things that just add up over time.
Sure.
And both your parents went to college and Ivy League and they're doctors, and you've got money and you go on vacations. But if you don't know how to connect to your kid, and here's what's really key, it's not just you connecting with your kid, it's you have to connect with your child in a way that they need to feel it, right? Yeah. So I can tell you I love you all day, but if you don't really feel it and believe it, it's like it wasn't said. I mean, I still think it's better to say it than not say it, but you got to feel it. So the real challenge is connecting to your child in the way that they need to feel connected.
So you have tools because you're an innovator. You're a patent holder of a few dozen patents. You're an innovator, a tool creator. So you have something for connection as well. And you work with businesses as well as families.
Right.
Can you tell us briefly about your tools?
Sure. So we've been talking about connection, through this whole conversation. And we're hearing it more and more in the news. We're seeing it in the workplace wellness programs, or we're not seeing it in programs yet, but we're seeing it in the conversation around connection in the workplace. And it's social connection, having that best friend at work, which I actually think that's a little bit off, because I can tell you at that last job where I was being emotionally just through the ringer every day, I had a great team. It was 4 of us, and we were so tight, and we loved each other. We were totally bonded as best friends at the office. But it didn't matter because the people that we needed to actually hear us and value us were the upper management, and they weren't. So, in less than 18 months, all 4 of us were gone out of that company because it was such a horribly toxic environment. So we had our best friend at work, but we weren't getting the connection. We weren't feeling heard and valued from the people who we need it from. Mm-hmm. And that's our bosses, in this example. Mm-hmm. So really what it comes down to is just getting to know each other as people first. And in the workplace, it's important. You don't have to share all your deep, dark secrets, but just getting to know what your interests are. Do you have family? Do you like to do triathlon after work? What's your favorite Netflix series? Just getting to know the normal, elements of a person and personalities. Mm-hmm. Not sharing the secrets, but just getting personal.
Yeah, do you have siblings?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you a middle child, a baby?
Yeah, and how was that for you growing up? Where did you grow up? What was it like being bounced around because you were an army brat? Or, what was it like making friends as a youngster? Or, are you a pack rat? What's in your closet that you haven't, taken out in 20 years? I don't know, just whatever. So by sharing these little personal elements with each other, that's how we connect. And that's how we build rapport and trust. And the more you know someone and understand someone, and the more they know and understand you, the more likely you are to trust them, the more likely you are to negotiate, to compromise, to work together, support. And that's how you create the best teams or groups of people. So the program that I developed is really just a way to pull out some of this information so that everybody has a chance to share their perspective on the world. And for the corporate world or business world, the website is called corporatejournal.com. And it's really just a fun question and answer platform where a small group of people get online. There's a huge database of questions. You answer a set of questions. It takes like 5 minutes. And the people in your group answer the same questions, and then you get to read each other's answers. And it's all done through the written word and through a website. Fun. And we hear all the time that we have to talk to one another. We're not talking enough. But I'm a big fan of talking. Obviously, I'm talking like crazy right now. But we know that verbal communication is not the only means of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, people used to write letters and become extremely connected just from writing letters.
Sure.
And sometimes these letters may be delivered only once every few months, like in times of war.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not see another person for a few years, months or years at a time, and you can become incredibly connected just through sharing your thoughts and feelings in
Mm-hmm.
writing. And we also know the writing of journaling, the power of journaling, and all the research around how therapeutic that is. So when you have a chance to share your perspective through this, private group medium, then it allows you to share your world and to learn about others' world. And then for the personal relationships, it works the same way. And the website is called familyejournal.com. And it works exactly the same way. The questions are just a little bit different, but it's a way to get to know your family or your group of friends. It could be a group of girlfriends. It could be extended family. And since it's all done online and it's all done asynchronously, which means you don't have to be in real time together, it works great if let's say you've got family in a different time zone in a different country.
Sure.
You can still connect in this deeper way. And we have done research showing that it does, peer-reviewed research showing that it does improve relationships. And I also have statistically significant data showing that it improves depression.
Wow.
Which is just, one of the behaviors we talked about.
Yeah. So you mentioned corporate e-journal and family e-journal. So we'll include those links in the show notes and people can go and take a look at it. And I highly encourage you all to look at it. It's very interesting, very cool. And where else can they find you? Before I ask my very last question, okay, you all hang in there. We're going to ask the all-important last question, but where else can people find you? What website?
So I guess other than family e-journal and corporate e-journal.com, I guess if you want to get in touch with me straight away, you can go to kevinrstrauss.com, and that's just like a general consulting type page if you want. I can do workshops and keynote speaking and things like that. If you want to bring this message, this emotional health message and connection to, a larger audience, things like that.
And we'll include that in the show notes for sure.
Okay,
so, Kevin, now we have listeners out there, they may be in their cars, they may be thinking about this, and what I like to do is to help them solidify and remember whatever it is that they might have, hit them in some way today. What is one action, something that they can do right away that would give them more of a sense of connection, belonging, or improve their emotional health or spiritual health? Whatever you want, one action.
I think I'll just reiterate what we talked about a little bit earlier, which is try and have that conversation, have a deeper conversation with that one or two people who you really love and trust. Get into it a little bit deeper where you can really share your feelings and what's going on in your world. Have that real conversation and listen to the other person and what's going on in their world.
Perfect.
It'll feel great.
Just maybe get curious. Ask somebody at work how many siblings they have.
Yeah.
Just, over coffee. It's scary for people sometimes to.
Oh, absolutely.
But curiosity comes natural to me. I have no problem asking questions, but for some people, I do know. I mean, even my own husband is like that. I think they fear being nosy. Oh, I don't want to be nosy. Well, people like to talk about themselves. They like to.
Yeah, I think once people get rolling, they like to. But again, I think a lot of what happens is, especially when we're young, very young, that we get shamed and we get judged and we get ridiculed for sharing our feelings. And in our society, feelings are considered a weakness. But really, that's where all of our intuition comes from. And our intuition is way smarter and way faster than our conscious brain.
I think that's a great place to end. Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I look forward to having further conversations with you offline Y'all, Kevin and I are going to be buddies. So we've had a few conversations before, and he's just been a pleasure to get to know. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And don't forget, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, I would love to hear from you. I have my special email address. It is hello, Rana. That's hello, RANA, at schoolofconnection.com. Hit me up. See you later next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the School of Connection podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes, and visit schoolofconnection.com/podcast for the show notes.